None of those things are a help desk function. The root of frustration is unmet expectations.
Welcome everyone to our next and fourth iteration of our AMA Strategy Bytes. My name is Mike Almeida. I am co-hosting this with my business partner and friend Mark Gibson. Today we're gonna start diving into the frustrating part of IT, as we'll call it, and really the frustrations that happen when you start to work with an IT team in your organization. So to set the standard or really set the stage for this conversation, let's suppose I submit a ticket to my IT team because an application I'm using is not working at all. So I go ahead and I type a ticket, and my team gets it. My IT team gets it, and they respond. They do their checks and like, hey, application appears to be working just fine. I don't see any issues with it. But from my perspective, the application is not doing something that I want it to do, and so that's a problem. My IT team is telling me it's working. The application is not doing something I want it to do. That's a problem, and that is frustrating. The second concept or idea we thought about here is when you onboard someone. Let's just say I'm a hiring manager and I have a brand new person that's going to start work for me. Well, I go ahead and I submit a ticket to my T team saying, "Hey, here are here's everything that we need for this new person that's starting tomorrow or today." And then I expect that after that ticket gets submitted, that my employee should have a device and should be able to start work contributions immediately on day one. And then after I submit the ticket, day one comes and goes. My employee is not ready to go. They don't have a device. It's not operational. They're not contributing to the company, and we're paying money for that. That's a problem. So the question, and Mark, this is where you can provide some insight. Why am I so frustrated with my IT team?
So, I guess probably to frame this a little bit, the root of frustration is unmet expectations, right? That's true for IT, but it's also true for life in general. And so whenever, we start to hear, those frustration pieces coming up, that's where I want to start is I want to understand what are the expectations? Are they clearly defined? Are they shared? Is on both sides of that, right? Where the two examples you gave, there's a business person on one side, and then there's usually an IT person on the other side. And the bridge and the gap that we're trying to overcome, that's where those expectations come together. And, when you take, something like an application configuration, and like you said, somebody is reaching out to the help desk team, they're looking for that IT person to know exactly what it is they expect.
Right.
But in most scenarios, that IT person doesn't. And that's largely because those expectations haven't been defined somewhere in the business as a part of a process or whatnot. Same thing holds true for like an onboarding, right? When you're doing an onboarding, typically it's what you just said. It's pretty straightforward. I have a device. I need somebody to be able to access it. They need the right permissions. They need access to the right resources, or software or data and so forth. But there's a bunch of variables there when you're an organization that's a little bit more mature from a security perspective, right? If your answer is just, hey, everybody gets access to everything, then that's usually a little bit easier to do. But most people in 2025 aren't looking for that type of setup. So the breakdown there is typically that the expectations aren't clear. They aren't understood on both sides of it. And I would tell you that normally it's because both of those scenarios that you just described are being treated as a help desk ticket. They're being sent to a help desk function. And on the backside of that, help desk functions don't handle those types of scenarios. So that's usually where this frustration is starting from.
Okay. So I hear you say you just made a distinction here that there's an IT team and there's a help desk. Are these two things different? Well, explain that.
The IT help desk is a part of the IT team, but the IT team is broader than the IT help desk. IT help desk really has a narrow mandate. Fix what's broken. It worked yesterday. It doesn't work today. And so if you are in a scenario where everything is being sent to a help desk, that's how a help desk, you know, individual will look at it, is they're trying to restore it back to a good working condition. Well, in both of the scenarios that you just, identified, there's not a definition for a good working condition unless there's somebody else on the IT team who's kind of walked the business through identifying what it should look like. So somebody like a system administrator, or in much smaller businesses, you're not going to have necessarily a CIO, but somebody who's familiar with the business side, to work with their workflows, and be able to understand how to translate what the business needs from the user perspective to what the IT team needs to be able to handle, so that when a ticket does come in because something's not working and there's already an established good working configuration, the help desk can look at that. The challenge, and why there's so much frustration that comes when working with IT, that whole group of functions that are beyond the help desk are largely non-existent for small businesses. So the things that you want to look at to say, hey, how does IT handle my security? How does IT handle my governance, which governance is largely about expectations? How does IT handle my, optimization and efficiencies? None of those things are a help desk function from an IT perspective.
Right.
And so, you as a business leader have really got to be able to say, hey, does my IT team, are they able to do both of those things? And the answer is, for most organizations, no. They have focused on the help desk function in terms of being able to say, we need really great SLAs, or we need great response times, or, we need to be down less once an incident happens.
Right.
But the reality is, you really want to be looking at, how do we prevent those things from happening to begin with? And that's a different skill set and a different group of people.
So what I'm hearing you say, Mark, is it sounds like there's a lot of emphasis placed on help desk, but it sounds like there should be maybe a change to that. What's the solution to this problem to start minimizing, or maybe completely reducing, the frustration to a minimal level?
Yeah. Frustration is a little bit like risk, right? You're not going to completely eliminate it,
right?
But you can manage it. And I think the first place you got to start thinking about this is, where are my dollars? Where are my resources, time, effort, money? Are those set up in my business as being able to handle reactive issues? Is that the expectation I've set for the IT team? Because if it is, that's, and you're getting those kind of responses, you have to just be okay with what that expectation is. What you're learning, though, as you go through that, is that there are a bunch of things that are not handled by the help desk. So you, as a business leader, have to say, okay, have I devoted resources to that? If you, have $100 as an IT budget, and you devote $80 of that to building out a help desk, that does not leave you a lot of room to be able to handle all of those other things. But you have conditioned yourself, as well as the rest of your organization, to expect that simply submitting a support ticket will get you the answer that you need. And so a lot of those things go to a help desk and they languish. They either are there for too long, or when maybe an event happens, it lasts for too long. There's too much, what's happening here? What's the discovery? That kind of stuff, because it's not documented, it's not prepared for. And sometimes that's security, but even from a functionality perspective, it's, hey, my application isn't working the way that I expect it to. But the reality is, user one has a different expectation than user two, than user three, than user four. And there's no standard for how the application should work, because largely there's no standard to the process that technology supports.
So clearly it sounds like that there might be a misunderstanding or a misalignment in how standard user views the IT organization as a whole, right? It sounds like they view it as a help desk, or maybe they've been conditioned to view it that way.
Yeah. Well, as a user, what's happening for me is I only understand the perspective from which I interact with that organization. And for most people, it is as a reactive scenario, right? Like, something's broken, I need to go and and talk to the help desk team. But IT is a much broader function than that, simply because of the way technology's role has evolved within the last 30 years, right, in small businesses. And so, but what's happened though is that the IT team that's responsible for supporting that technology, in a lot of cases for small business, hasn't expanded with that role. So you still got you've got a much broader role for technology, still being handled by the traditional IT help desk, and that leaves a lot to be desired from a business outcomes perspective.
So how does someone expand that role? Like, what does that look like? What would you do if you were working with a client who had this methodology or this mindset? How would you tell them to change it?
Well, it's really about trying to help educate and maybe highlight the idea that there's a broader impact than just answering those help desk calls.
Okay.
And so when you start to talk about this more from a business perspective instead of just from an IT perspective, the question becomes, how does the technology impact the business, so that the business leader can start to understand this is where it's falling down. Here's what good should look like. Here's the missing part, or we don't have what good should look like. So it's impossible to set a standard for support. It's impossible to set a standard configuration to maintain. When you look at the resources that you're investing, in our last call, we talked about, the BPS model in terms of understanding how to start allocating, budget from a larger business perspective into the IT piece as it's a part of a larger equation. Once you've got those dollars that you've established that you're going to be okay with spending, the exercise for you becomes, how am I spending those resources or allocating them? Meaning, how much of that's going to preventing the issues versus how much of that's going to responding and reacting to the issues. And for most small businesses, significantly higher percentages of those dollars are being spent on fixing issues after they happen versus being able to identify, manage, and prevent them.
So why? This is a paradigm shift, as most people invest money in reactive, as we've talked about earlier. Why is it important? Why is it beneficial for business owners to start putting more investment into the proactive part of their IT program?
Well, maybe the first thing I would say, and probably maybe not the most important, is it's less frustrating. We're talking at that point about a scenario where you should be able to expect a smoother experience, from your technology. Like the idea of saying, hey, onboarding or standard experience from an application. The two examples you gave at the beginning. I would tell you, I don't think that's a reasonable ask of an IT help desk, but it's absolutely a reasonable ask of an IT team, right? And so as long as your IT team has those right resources, and I would tell you, you need outside of the help desk, you need somebody who's going to be able to manage the technology that changes, like the system administration. All right, you're going to need somebody who's going to have an eye on the security piece, and then you need to have somebody who has an eye over the entire experience and execution of that program. And that's how you start to get, less frustration, but also you get more value from your technology as well. Keep in mind, at the end of the day, we only get technology because we're expecting it to help us deliver more value in our business, right, and do it in a way that's better, faster, or cheaper. And again, that equation doesn't come from an IT help desk. It comes from somebody being able to understand your business, come alongside you, and help you understand where you sprinkle in the technology that makes you a little more special, in your particular world.
So if someone were making a decision to partner with a new IT partner, what would you recommend in terms of first steps? Like what should you do to make sure you get it right the first time?
Well, again, I think if you look at this as a business equation first, or a business challenge, before you start getting into the details of the technology, it's really about what's the balance between preventing the issue and responding to the issue. A business is going to look different if they are focused on solving an issue at 9 p.m. after it's already happened versus preventing the issue at 9 a.m. or identifying it at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
So being preventative versus reactive. If your IT team is focused on the 9 p.m. piece, that's what they're going to be geared to do. And, again, I'm saying 9 p.m., just because it's after hours. But at the end of the day, the point is really more about the idea that they're going to be focused on solving that issue for you after it's happened versus preventing that disruption to begin with. And so whether it's your in-house or outsourced team, what you should be able to do is talk to the leader of that IT team and have them explain to you in business terms. How is our IT team set up? What's the best way for it to serve us? And the framework we have, right, there's 20 elements to that. Help desk support is one of 20 things that should be happening within, a small business IT team. Now, are you going to be able to hit all 20? Probably not. But the point is to say that for most small business owners, the help desk and reactive support plays an outsized role in their expectations and how they make decisions as they, apply those expectations to their IT teams.
Okay. How important is communication here? Because it clearly sounds like what I heard you say earlier is there's often misalignment or unmet expectations. What should this communication look like in an organization that works with let's say an outsourced IT team?
Sure. Well, it's got to be a regular cadence, right? If there's no if there's no out of the ordinary changes that are happening in your organization, which how often is that? Right. But if there aren't any, there's still a normal cadence that needs to take place to, make sure that there are any changes in, sort of business conditions or business needs that the technology might be able to help to address or to account for. That's something that should be happening on a regular basis. I'd say probably monthly, suffices for most organizations, depending on how dynamic they are. But even, outside of a normal cadence, you're going to have things that are shifting projects or new users or new technologies. You're going to have new processes that are built. You're going to have new capabilities that hey, we came up with a new way to be able to market through email. Well, gosh, that needs to be communicated with the IT team and kind of coordinated. And again, that's not a help desk ticket after you send out the marketing email and it failed because DNS settings weren't updated. So those kinds of scenarios are where there has to be communication between sort of the business leader and the IT leaders, which again is the point of this is that there's more to the IT team than just that help desk. A help desk isn't really going to be able to help you manage that.
So clearly, so far, we what I've heard you say is a few things, right? Our small business owners should be focusing, or at least considering, more of their budget on the preventative part of IT, because it will help them, in your words, Mark, is prevent the problem from happening at 9 a.m. instead of addressing it when it happens at 9 p.m. And also you mentioned the level of collaboration of key business leaders and key IT personnel. For someone who is looking to improve their business, is there anything else they should be considering when they put the right team together, they put the right budget in place? Is there anything else that they're missing or they should consider to really get this program up and running in a way that supports the business?
I think it boils down to just those two things we were talking about. One is you as the leader are going to be the one tasked with making the decisions for resource allocation. Understand how you're currently allocating those resources. Is it reasonable that you're going to be able to prevent issues and shape outcomes more so than simply react to them? If you aren't devoting enough resources to achieve that outcome, you're going to have to make some decisions there. Once you're okay with that, then what you need to be able to do is have a partner that is, again, either in-house or outsourced, somebody who can help lead that IT team for you and meet the expectations that you have. And those expectations have to be about how your business performs with the technology, not, maybe indicators like response time and SLA. Obviously, those things can be a big deal, but you've got to be able to tie that to the business results and the outcomes. And then on the other side of that, that IT partner is going to need somebody on the business to partner with them that can help them understand how the technology integrates with workflows and business processes. If you have those two people, then you just got to give them some time. You've got to protect their ability to dedicate to that. You can't ask them to work on that and then they have no time to collaborate together to work on things. Again, work in the business work on the business instead of in the business,
Right.
Type stuff. And so those are really, if you set that stage, results will flow from that because you've handed off your expectation to those two people, and they will then be able to take and make those expectations happen.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to pivot to some questions from the field here. So here's the first question. Are you telling me my help desk doesn't matter?
No, of course not. I am saying, though, that expectations of the help desk have to be right-sized to the role that it plays. And the role that it plays is a portion, and I would say a small portion of what IT should be doing for your business. So that's the adjustment that I think that should be made here.
Okay. No, that's a good answer. I like it. All right. Here's another one, which I think you've already touched on this, Mark, but maybe you can go a little bit deeper. Why is my help desk less important than other parts of IT?
Well, again, I don't necessarily think it's less important. I think it's more about the flow of events, right? The help desk is designed to be the safety net. It's designed to deal with the issues after they've already occurred, after they've already disrupted business. So it's more about saying, hey, we can't ask them to handle both the aftermath and be responsible for the prevention of it. It's two different skill sets, and it's two different mindsets even. So it's really hard to be preventative and reactive all in the same brain or all in the same set of processes.
Okay.
So it's just about choosing outcomes, right? Which one do you want?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, here's a really good one. How confident are you that putting less emphasis on the help desk will result in fewer and shorter disruptions? Isn't that what the help desk is designed to do?
Well, again, I would say no, the help desk is not designed to prevent disruptions, right? The help desk is designed first and foremost, and really only, to fix something that was working and isn't now. It is purely reactive support. I think I would say, look at other parts of your business. Is IT unique in terms of saying, hey, I only have resources who deal with stuff after it happens, and yet I don't have any issues? Finance, HR in particular, you have people that are in your organization that are designed to prevent things from happening, and then they deal with them after the fact, if it comes up. But my confidence comes from observing this in multiple businesses across multiple functions. This is not really an IT philosophy. This is more about running a business that is focused on, again, shaping outcomes than they are responding to them.
Mm-hmm. All right. You mentioned earlier misaligned expectations between a business and between the help desk. How do you ensure that expectations are set from the beginning?
So, whatever standard you choose to work from, we choose to work for some particular frameworks. There's industry-wide stuff. There's some proprietary things that we've put together. But they're about communicating that with the business, leaders, whoever the appropriate partners are there, and then applying what they need to what we recommend. So that what we're talking about and looking at is a blend of business requirements and IT capabilities at that point. So if you are, again, if you're not having those communications, then the rest of it is just users bring their own expectations to the table, so to speak. And so does the help desk guy. And rarely do those two things go together. But I keep highlighting the help desk because that's where the interaction happens with the organization if you don't have someone else, because that's the only time somebody's going to engage IT is, hey, I have a problem. The goal is to have IT engage them or them engage IT before there's a problem.
Okay. This one's a good one. This sounds like my business today. How do I get my IT team on the same page based on what you just shared?
Well, who's responsible for your IT in terms of, and I'm talking about a person, right? So again, whether you have an outsourced vendor or an in-house team, that should roll up to one person is responsible for how that function performs. And so if you have that person, it's first and foremost getting on the same page about what the expectations are. And then once they have the expectations, can that person in the role help you understand what kind of resources you need, maybe budget allocations, maybe it's different roles, maybe it's process, whatever. I mean, and it's not going to happen overnight. This is something that takes a while to develop. You can put you can put some initial pieces in place that allow you to see some results fairly quickly within, say, 90 days or so. But it's just going to continue to be an ongoing thing. I mean, IT guys like to talk about how security is not a destination, it's a journey. Well, that's true for all of it. It's not just about security. It's about, there are going to be constant changes, and you've got to have a dynamic team that can respond to that. Or not even a team. You've got to have a dynamic function within your business.
Okay. And here we go. I've got this last question for today. How can I take more ownership of this situation as a business owner, understanding now that I have more feedback to provide my IT provider than just picking up a phone and calling a help desk?
So have the conversation in business terms is when, it's too often when when a business leader is coming to the table, they're talking to the IT guy, and it's all technology. It's gobbledygook, right? It's 4-letter acronyms. It's concepts they don't understand. They don't have a frame of reference for. And the IT guy doesn't speak business, and the business guy doesn't speak IT. And so a lot of times, again, frustration comes out of that. And so we're no longer having these regular cadenced communications and meetings. And it's really the business leader at that point is just waiting until something blows up that causes them to say, okay, I've had enough. We got to get some change, right? That's obviously, again, that's a reactive stance, from a business perspective. So I think that, the bottom line advice, I suppose, to that person posing that question is sit down, have a conversation with the person responsible for delivering the IT service, and set the expectation in terms of your business, not in terms of, again, patch reports, KPIs or SLAs or response. Those are not the things that are going to drive your business forward. So whatever's important to your business in terms of, how it impacts revenue, how it impacts margins, cash, production, whatever those things are, that's the things you should be talking about in an IT meeting.
Well said. Well, Mark, as always, I appreciate your insight on a very timely topic. Thanks again for jumping on here and answering these questions. And for all of our watchers and listeners, thank you for joining us for our AMA. As always, you can find us on the last Friday of the month at noon on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or Restream. Thanks again for your time. Hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and weekend. Take care.